So in this video, we're going to be looking at Savers Vaults on THORChain. So let's jump straight in and take a look. So why should you use Savers Vaults on THORChain? What are the advantages of them? So the biggest one really is to earn yield on native assets without price exposure to any other asset, including Rune. So to give you an example of that, a native asset would be something like BTC. So you can deposit Bitcoin and you can earn Bitcoin back. And that is a native asset. That's not a wrapped asset. So that's a big advantage of why use a Savers Vault. So as I've just mentioned, they are native assets. So there's no wrapping of them. There's no impermanent loss as you're just depositing one. In this case, I gave you an example of BTC. And there's no price exposure to multiple assets because there are no pairs. They are permissionless, open source, decentralized, a self-custody solution. So they're different to centralized exchanges. And we're going to go a bit further here because you can actually maintain full control of your keys using them. Each transaction is on the chain, so it's on the blockchain, so you can verify it. If you're depositing BTC, you can verify your transaction on the BTC network, for example. You can actually use your self-custody wallet to earn BTC, as an example, on your BTC. So you don't need to give up the custody. You can use your whatever wallet that you'd like to use, which is in your custody. You can connect a hardware wallet to it, and we'll take a look at that in a bit. You can withdraw at any time. There are no lockup periods in these Savers Vaults. So how do they actually generate yield? And I'm not going to go into too much technical detail here. I'm going to kind of whiz through this to keep it nice and short. But essentially, when people swap in the liquidity pools, you pay fees, and then these fees help to generate yield. And that's quite normal in the DeFi space. You also have block rewards from the liquidity pools. And if you use a Savers Vault, you will earn about half of the yield that you normally would in a paired liquidity pool. So a Rune with an asset liquidity pool. So if you're using this, you're only using one cryptocurrency, remember? It's a native cryptocurrency, so you'll earn less yield over the same time frame as if you would with a pair. So how does THORChain secure assets on other blockchains? And as far as I'm aware, it's the only one that does this, where it can hold native assets and it doesn't wrap them from different blockchains. This is a big advantage of THORChain and this decentralization and you holding your own native assets. So the deposit assets are secure in the liquidity pools, and THORChain uses several mechanisms to secure the liquidity. So THORChain has around 100 anonymous nodes, and this does, I mean, there have been fewer than that, but it can hold a lot more, and each of which they bond Rune to validate blocks and earn rewards on the THORChain. So that's the process, and that's how the liquidity is backed. There are 5 vaults. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but they're controlled by 20 randomly selected nodes. Okay, so rather than a specific node being in charge, it's at random. In the Savers Vaults and in THORChain, there's no person, there's no group, there's no entity that can unilaterally control user funds on THORChain. And in the event of a loss of funds, the node bonds are slashed to recoup all of the losses due to all of the vaults are always over collateralized. And if you've looked into the tokenomics of Rune, you'll know that it is bonded to secure liquidity. You can always verify the solvency of THORChain's vaults on chain. So that's very live and transparent. And as I've said at the bottom, transparency is the default. All user funds are solvent, they're accessible, and they're verifiable on chain. And we'll see the kind of mechanisms that it can use in a minute. And before we go any further, I just want to say that obviously anything that is shared in this video is not financial advice, and I'm not encouraging the use of Savers Vaults. It's purely for education and to share really what I've found, and I have used it myself. And if you are liking this content, please do like the video, please do subscribe to the channel, as it really does help. But what are the risks or the potential risks of THORChain and the Savers Vaults? Withdrawals may be temporarily halted if THORChain needs to preserve the security. So they have an automatic solvency checker within THORChain. And if an issue is detected, or if there's an issue with an individual chain, it will halt withdrawals, but funds are unaffected. So that's just to secure the whole network. And I mentioned how Rune is bonded before. So Rune is bonded by node operators to protect the whole of THORChain. So that it's a ratio of 2:1 against other assets. So it needs to be it's basically double the amount of Rune than the other asset needs to be put on the system. So the overall THORChain capacity is based on the total amount of Rune bonded by these node operators. So to explain that a bit more, when the Rune price is higher, there is a higher Rune value bonded. And that means there's more space and there's more capacity in the THORChain network. And what we've seen more recently at the time of recording this video in August 2023 is actually deposits were halted or suspended for a while on the THORChain network because the value of Rune, the price of Rune dropped. Therefore, there wasn't the space or the capacity in the network. So it closed down for a period of time and then reopened when there was space. Again, this is not financial advice, but please do, as always, when you're using these protocols, these platforms, please do check the slippage. Please do check the network fees on your entry and your exit on your hardware wallet. Don't rely on what you see on the screen. It could be the case that larger deposits are better on THORChain Savers Vaults, and you need to make sure that you keep gas for your deposit and withdrawal, of course. And before I go on to that, we're going to cover this in a bit, but gas is a bit different on THORChain. You pay for your gas with the native asset. So if I want to deposit BTC into a Savers Vault, for example, the gas I'm paying is BTC, not Rune. Okay, so it's very different. Another risk is fairly obviously an exploit on THORChain, and these have taken place. And also, if you are using the liquidity pools where you're pairing assets together, a risk of using THORChain is impermanent loss. So the native cryptocurrencies that are supported are listed on the screen. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, BNB, Bitcoin Cash, Dodge, Litecoin, Atom, Avalanche, you've got there. So how do you connect to the Savers Vaults? And there are different wallets that you can use. And the first one we're going to look at, you've got the logo there, is THORSwap. And this is the main website that I would suggest is the wallet to use, because it has links with to Thor Yield, to Thor Node, to the liquidity pools, etc. And there's a lot of information that you can really do your own research with before you use Savers Vault, if that is something that you decide to do. An advantage is that you can connect THORSwap to a hardware wallet directly, like a Trezor. You can connect it to MetaMask. You can connect it to XDeFi. There are some limitations, which I will show you when we go to the more practical side of this video, but that is a positive. And just remember, if you do want to add liquidity to pools on THORSwap, so that's not the Savers Vault, that's a pool, it needs to be 50-50 with Rune. So you need to have 50% Rune and 50% asset that you're putting in there. You can put one asset in there. So if you don't have any Rune, for example, you can just put, I don't know, let's say I want to put BTC in a liquidity pool. That's fine. You can do that with just one asset. What it will do is it will split your BTC into two, and then it will just essentially swap 50% of your BTC into Rune for you. So you're losing more BTC in that way, as it were. One thing to note is that some wallets and some hardware wallets, so Trezor, MetaMask, don't actually currently support native Rune on THORChain. XDeFi does. So please, again, do your research if you want to get involved in either liquidity pools and also the Savers Vaults. Another wallet that you can use to access is XDeFi. You can actually connect, as I said, you can connect XDeFi with THORSwap, which we looked at before. An advantage of XDeFi is you can connect it to all of the blockchains that are on THORChain in the Savers Vaults. So you're not limited. I've mentioned limitations previously. Trezor support was added to XDeFi in July of 2023. So you can connect if you are using a Trezor, or you can Ledger is exactly the same if you're using a Ledger. Okay, so any hardware wallet that you want to connect, you can connect to XDeFi, and then you can connect XDeFi to THORSwap. And the last one I just wanted to include, in case you use mobile wallets or you like doing them, I thought this was quite an interesting one to include. And again, I'm not advocating any of these, it's just for education. But you have Thor Wallet, which is a mobile wallet. It's a non-custodial wallet. And what I found interesting is it offers a free Visa card if you are in the EU. And it also offers a complimentary Swiss bank account if you're in the EU. So I thought that was quite unique, and I wanted to share that with you as well. So how do you add liquidity to Savers Vaults? The first thing you do is you're going to hold whichever native asset, in this case I've used BTC, whichever native asset you want on or in a wallet. Okay, in this case I've chosen Trezor, it could be Ledger, any supported wallet. And again, this is not financial advice. You can do whatever you feel is best, but I advocate for not your keys, not your coins. So I would advise people to use a hardware wallet connected to the Savers Vaults on THORChain. Once you've got that in place, you connect whichever wallet you are connecting to THORSwap, just connect it. If you've got the funds of the cryptocurrency, the native asset in your wallet, that's fine. Just connect it to THORSwap, make sure it's on the right network. You'll then add whichever asset you want to add liquidity to into the Savers Vaults. This can take a bit of time. And please, again, do check the gas fees, check the fees on your wallet that you're using to pay. And as I said before, the gas is paid in the native token. So if I'm depositing BTC, I'm paying gas in BTC. And then finally, what you're going to want to do is monitor the performance of your assets and the vault on a regular basis using the explorers. And here are some useful links for you if you want to go and check this out further, that I'll include in the description below. And the last thing before we jump into actually looking at the platform and how you add liquidity into the Savers Vaults, one thing that THORChain has recently just implemented is lending. So this is a big thing for THORChain, and it's why there's been a lot of exposure in the media and social media in particular. And it's why if you look at the price of Rune at the moment, it is increasing when a lot of things are decreasing, and it's doing very well. So that's the latest news for THORChain. But let's jump into THORSwap and let's just have a quick look at what it looks like in there.